Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com.
What form of burial should you choose for your loved one? After 120 years, a person passes away, b'seiva toiva in good old age, and the mourning relatives are left with some serious decisions to make, including which cemetery should they bury their loved one in and what type of grave should it be. You see, in the burial world, there exist different types of burials, as we will analyze here. And the question is asked, are there any differences in halacha between the different forms of burials that a cemetery may offer you? And are certain burials actually invalid, not kosher, and cannot be done to a relative or to any Jew? So while most of Jewry, Baruch Hashem, keeps to the old tradition of what's called in-ground burials, in which a casket in Chutz La'aretz or the body in Eretz Yisrael is placed directly into the hole in the ground and then covered with earth, the growing need of cemetery space within large cities has created a greater variety of forms of burials which are space convenient for the cemetery and for the city, which are known today as overground structures called Mausoleums, or in the Hebrew term Kvurat Komot or Kvurat Ramah or Sanhedrin cave burials. In all these different main names we mentioned, the common denominator is that there's basically a building sitting on top of ground with makeshift shelves into which the mace, the deceased, is placed into. Many cemeteries in the United States and other parts of the world began building these burial buildings already in the 60s and 70s for massive burials known as mausoleums. And in Eretz Yisrael, they have also become popular in different cemeteries in the populated areas of Jerusalem and Gush Dan, which includes Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and other cities, in which the mace is entered into this makeshift shelf which is overground. What's the deal with this type of burial? Is it kosher? So we have a clear ruling in the Gemara in Sanhedrin 46b, named Rabbi Yochanan, recorded in the Paiskim, the Torah and Shulchan Aruch, chapter 362 in Yeridea, that the mitzvah deraisa of burial that is upon the relatives and community means that the body must be buried within the earth, within the ground. And that is the wording there in the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch. If one places the body in a casket and does not bury it, believes it in the casket, he transgresses the biblical prohibition of leisalin and transgresses the biblical command of burial. So based on this, it seems very simple. The mausoleums or all these other different types of innovative burials which are above ground are absolutely puzzle, and it's forbidden to bury in such a way. On the other hand, if we do research, we find that there is a little bit of precedent for this type of burial. You see, in the times of the Sanhedrin, it was customary to bury within caves. A cave, which is a hole in a mountain, had shelves carved out from within the walls, and the bodies were entered into these shelves. This is known as Kvurat Kuchin, a burial within shelves called Kuchin. Many of the Tanaim were buried in this fashion, and we see it in the old cemeteries of Tzfas and Jerusalem. They weren't buried in earth. They were buried in the mountain above ground. Thus, seemingly the mausoleums and other newly innovated forms of burial have basis among Jewish history. However, in truth, after a careful analysis, we see that there's a major difference between what was done, as is known as Kvurat Sanhedrin in the Tanaic time, and what's being done today in these cemeteries. The Sanhedrin burial was done inside the actual cave, which is underground. It's in a mountain. A mountain is ground. Now, although we'll give you that it wasn't done with earth, it was done inside the stone, in truth, according to halacha, stone or any ground material is kosher for burial. It doesn't have to be specifically earth. But nonetheless, the main component must be that it's inside the ground. The new burial structures, however, of these mausoleums and Kvurat Komot that are being made in the cemeteries are completely above the ground. So are they kosher? Practically, this question was brought to the table of many Migdalei HaPoskim for them to rule both in Chutz La'aretz, where this type of burial was being used, and in Eretz Yisrael, where many cities were losing ground space and they needed to make a space-efficient form of burial. And they asked Daily Yisrael, can this be done? And practically, we have a major machlekes amongst the poskim here, with many citing that this type of burial is completely invalid, while others say that it is valid if done in a certain way, as we will explain. So let's first explain the first side, which invalidates this type of burial. They say very simple. It's overground. In order to be a kosher burial, we learn from the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, it must be within the earth. You're building a building and putting it in a shelf. What is that? And even if you go ahead and put earth inside the shelf, it's still not underground. And even if you go ahead and somehow make an attachment between the earth in the grave and the earth on the floor, such as through a shaft, it doesn't make the earth that's in this shelf be considered as if it's underground. And thus, according to this approach, one who buries a relative or any Jew in such a way has not fulfilled the mitzvah of burial and transgresses the Issur D'Oraisa of delaying the burial of a Jew. Practically, who rules this way? So rules the Beis Yitzchak in Yeredeya, Tshuva 161, the Igros Moshe in Yeredeya, Volume 3, Tshuva 142 and 143. To quote his words, it is a great prohibition to bury an overground kuchen called Mausoleums, as the burial must be within the actual ground, and one who does so transgresses the biblical command of burial. It is thus obvious that one is obligated to publicize this prohibition, that no Jew be buried in these buildings due to transgressing two grave prohibitions of a negative and positive command each and every day, in addition to the grave sin of causing pain to the souls of the dead. End quote of the Igros Moshe. So also rules the Minchas Yitzchak in Volume 10, Tshuva 122. Start quote, there was no doubt that the burial must be within the ground and not within material that was removed from the ground and then attached. And so also rules the Divrei Yatziv, the Klausenberger Rebbe, Rav Mashash, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, of Israeli, one of the chief members of the Rabbanut Rashit Yisrael. So was the ruling of Rav Yashiv, the Badatz Eida Charedis, Rav Wozner, in his final psak, Rav Moshe Sternbach, Rav Meir Brandsdorfer, and many Migdalei Rabbani America, the previous generation, who came out against the Mausoleums. However, some Rabbanim came to the defense of these forms of burials. They first write that the Mechaber himself in chapter 364 mentions the concept of Kever Shel Binyan, based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, which means a building which is used for graves. So we see the concept exists. And we also find in the Tshuva of the Beis Yitzchak that if you attach the building to the ground, then it's as if it's considered part of the earth, and it's as if it's under earth. And the Igros Moshe and another Tshuva also gives room for this understanding, because practically based on this, a few Rabbanim of today have given their stamp of approval for this form of burial, and so is the officially adopted position of the Rabbanut Rashit Yisrael today, that this is a kosher form of burial in their opinion, as attached to the ground, and they also put earth inside, and do other things to try to make it be considered it's underground, being that it's attached to the ground. Practically halacha l'maisa, being that we're dealing with an Issur D'Oraisa and a biblical obligation to bury the dead, and many poskim aser it, and also their reason makes more sense than those who are trying to be matir something that was never done before in Jewish history, to innovate a new form of burial. Common sense dictates that one must oppose such a form and do everything in his power to be stringent that a deceased relative be buried in the traditional ground burial that's not within a built structure or a mausoleum. While in Chutz La'aretz this may be a very easy decision, as there's plenty of ground space for ground burials, in Eretz Yisrael in many cities, forfeiting the mausoleum burial and choosing a grand burial comes with a very hefty fee of tens of thousands of dollars, as the Bituach Leumi, the Israeli insurance, based on the lenient ruling of the Rabbanut Harishit, only provides the mausoleum burials in those areas. But nonetheless, even so, one is required even to pay a lot of money for this purpose. Chas v'shalom, his relative should not be buried in these overground buildings, relying on a term disagreed upon by many poskim that have no precedent and find little logic to stand upon. Conclude with a ma'aseh that happened with Rav Yashiv, the famous posik from Yerushalayim, in which an individual had buried his father in one of these Israeli mausoleums, and he asked Rav Yashiv, is a kosher b'di'evid? And Rav Yashiv told him that he transgresses every single day the Issur of burial, chiyuv to bury his father, and therefore he should immediately have him removed and placed in a ground burial, and that's exactly what this Jew did. Being that it's a zgul farichas yamim to purchase a plot during your lifetime, and so was the minhag vasik of Klal Yisrael, as recorded in different sources, the person doesn't have to wait until after 120 to have to make a rush decision of where to bury. He can already purchase himself a plot in a kosher cemetery, a cemetery that buries in the ground, for not a lot of money, rather than to wait for after 120 and have all the pressure of finding an alternative to that being offered by the Bituach Leumi and Chevra Kadisha.
Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com. Our free services of making Torah knowledge available to the public depends on donors like you. Please help us continue our work through making even a small contribution at Shulchanaruchharav.com under the Daily Halacha Dedication section or in the subscription page. Also, check out our online courses and many sefarim available for purchase that will both enhance your Torah knowledge and help support our work.